Hi, welcome back. This is our series on how to photograph the perfect bait. We're right at the beginning now, where we actually start at the end. In today's video, let's look at the equipment that you'll need. Thanks for joining me. Please like and subscribe, and I guess you got to hit some little bell thing that notifies you. Grab a hammer and bang on that bell a time or two, and let's get going on our next adventure. Let's think about what do we want our photograph to look like in the end. How good do we want it? Do we want it absolutely as perfect as we can get it, or is something a little more natural going to work better for you? Only you know how to decide that. Sorry if there's a little background noise. As you can see, I was in a coat. It's currently 6 degrees out. We have about a 45-mile-an-hour wind, and the cold's creeping in through the walls, and the shop's a little bit chilly. So, let's get started here. Obviously, you've already picked the very most important thing, your subject. What are we going to take a picture of? Now, picture in your mind, what do you want this subject to look like? When it's all done and said, what do you want it to look like? How's it going to appear when you publish this online? Got that? Keep that thought in your mind. Okay? And let's move on. Very next thing you're going to need is some form of a camera. Now, cameras are subjective. How much do you want to spend, or what do you already have? Everybody has a phone. These smartphones nowadays have a camera on them that is every bit as good as a digital camera was 5 years ago. Okay, they are really getting to be sophisticated. There are downfalls to these cameras though, mainly the lenses. If you notice, the lenses on this are very close together. What does that do for our photographs? Well, usually you're only going to use one lens when you photograph, and the other lenses are when you're shooting a video. Now, can you shoot a video and crop one frame out of that video? Absolutely. You can do anything you want nowadays. There's no limit to your imagination. Okay? But when you photograph with one lens, everything becomes flat. If you notice right now, the baits on my picture here look rather flat. They look like they're sitting at the same level, when in reality, they are actually sitting quite far apart. When we shoot straight down, we can see that they have a space between them. As we move back and down on our subjects, that space goes away. That's the problem with the camera. The camera only has a single lens and a very, very short distance between the glass of the lens and the sensor of that lens, of that camera. Okay? That means that it's going to flatten it even worse. Hence, those baits that are laying on your hand, confusing the brain. Are you buying the baits, or are you buying a hand with some baits in it? The camera has flattened everything out. The next natural direction to go would be a 35mm camera. Now, this is not a 35mm camera. This is a 645. In other words, it's a medium format. But not everybody wants to spend that kind of money. You can pick up a good 35mm camera from a pawn shop for around $100. Okay, if you go to Walmart, Canon EOS is only a few $100s. Okay? If you already have one, great. Now we're going to step towards some real bait photography. Okay? Of course, another very popular option is GoPro. Now GoPros are cool. You can take videos with them, take them along on your fishing adventure. There's a lot of additional things you can get for them: waterproof cases, flashes, you can get little video lights, you can get microphones. There's a ton you can do with the GoPro. Are they a good camera? You'd think so with the price that they charge for them. Are they in reality? Not really. Same problem with the GoPro as with your phone is the lens is directly on top of the sensor. There's no real space between the sensor and the lens. So it's going to flatten things really bad. Another problem with the GoPro is the type of lens. GoPros all have a very wide angle lens, okay? And which is great for action videos. If you're going to be skiing, snow skiing, if you're going to be fishing, whatever it is that you're going to be doing, a wide angle lens is probably what you want so that you can capture all the action without having to adjust the camera very much. You see a lot of guys wearing these on their hats or wearing them on their chest, and they're catching everything that they're doing. But if you notice, everything in the center of the lens is very, very close to them. Everything as it moves away from the lens appears to be miles away. So in other words, if you have this on your boat, you're standing directly in the center and this thing's mounted to your chest, your fishing rod and your hands look huge, and the gunnels of the boats look tiny, like you got a 80-foot wide boat. That is going to affect the quality of your photos. Okay? You're going to have to get very, very close, which means that the center of that photo will appear magnified compared to the edges of that photo. So if I'm going to spend $300 or $400 on a GoPro, I would rather buy a 35mm. Now, but you can't do video, can you? Sure you can. Most digital 35mm SLR cameras will raise their mirror and shoot videos. Okay, the Canon EOS Rebels are a good example of that. Oh, but it's so hard to take on the boat. Well, not really. You can still get the same waterproof cases. You can even get waterproof cases with a float so that if something happens, that camera floats on the surface. And it'll stay waterproof. I mean, you won't get it wet. So, you know, there's the same adaptations for a 35mm camera as there is for a GoPro. So, if I have to choose which one I'm going to buy, I'm going to buy a 35mm because you can do more with it. If all you have is a GoPro camera though, we'll make it work. Don't worry about it. I got your back, man. Okay, next thing we need to look at is backgrounds. Do you want to spend some money on some backgrounds? You can always photograph your baits outside, which is great. Nice natural lighting, nice natural setting. If you're next to a stream or a pond, you got it made. That's a built-in background. However, natural backgrounds like that have a bad habit in a photograph of getting way too busy. And we'll talk more about that as we start taking our pictures. But you do not want a very busy background. Okay, other places you can get background is Amazon. Amazon sells these heavy paper backgrounds printed to look like they're hand painted. Back in the day, and still today, if you're a portrait photographer or a wedding photographer, hand painted backgrounds are enormously expensive. These are small, they're 24 inches by 36 inches, just the right size for taking pictures of baits. They're flexible, which is ideal, and they're durable, which is also nice. I keep mine stored in a portfolio case like you would carry your artwork around. And I have dozens of these. You can get these same backgrounds at Hobby Lobby. Okay, they're sold as just a heavy printed paper. You get them in solid colors, multicolors. You can get them like this one that has a hand painted look. You know, and they're inexpensive. For a set of 10 of these is like $8. They're very inexpensive to buy. Okay, I would not get the hard tag board, and when we talk more about backgrounds and taking our actual pictures, we're going to look at why not to get hard tag board. But these flexible heavy paper ones, they work just fine. Another option is homemade ones. You can make these out of a bed sheet or scraps of cloth. You can take a piece of cloth and hand paint it yourself. Drizzle different colors of paint on it, or you know, use rough brush strokes like a Rembrandt or something. You can make your own backgrounds very easily. Different colors of cloth reflect the light different, which might either enhance or detract from your bait, and we'll talk more about that later. But you can make homemade cloth backgrounds. The last thing we need to think about in our photography is our lighting. Okay, how extravagant do you want to go with your lighting? You can spend a little bit of money, and believe me, it's not very much. It's like $135, and you can get an entire studio lighting kit. All of the stands, you get 5 umbrellas, you get a softbox, you get the light bulbs, you get the light bulb sockets, you get everything you need times 5 for $135 of these lower cost studio kits. Are they great? They're not absolutely perfect, but they will work, and they'll work for an inexpensive cost. If you want to go even lower cost, you could simply get these reflectors from a local farm and ranch store or hardware store. These reflectors work quite well for lighting, but the bulbs you choose to put in them makes a difference. You need to get daylight balanced. In other words, 5400 to 5600 Kelvin lights. So a standard white LED daylight balanced light will work just fine for your lighting. A final consideration for lighting is flashes. Flashes become extraordinarily expensive, or they can be fairly inexpensive. I like these Pentex flashes, which run about $250 a piece. The problem is you can't get just one. They're kind of like a Lay's potato chip. You have to have multiple light sources, so you need to get multiple of these flashes. Whatever you do, if you're going to buy multiple flashes, get them all the same brand and make sure that you can use them as a master flash or a slave flash. We'll talk more about that when we get right into our lighting division of this, but that will become important. How many of these flashes or lights or light bulbs do you need? Realistically, I would start with a minimum of 3, and there's a reason. You can use one as your subject light, which is going to light up your subject. One as a background light, which is going to light up any backgrounds you have and make your subject stand out better. And you can use a third one as a fill light. Now a fill light does exactly what it says. It just fills in the dark spots. Where's it a little shady? Where do we want to eliminate a shadow so that our bait stand out better? So a third one would make a fill. Can you mix and match? Can you use daylight lamps and flashes. Yes, you can. And we'll talk more about that when we talk about our lighting in this series. So, we're almost there. We know what we need. We know what our baits want to look like when we're done. We're going to make the perfect photograph of that perfect bait. That's what's going to increase our sales. Thanks for joining me. I sure appreciate you coming along for this ride. Make sure you grab that subscribe button and take that like button, throw it out on the lawn, jump up and down on it a time or two, make sure that it's selected as well. We'll see ya. And remember, we're going to make this look good enough that you throw it in a can, smother it with mustard, and even you'd eat it. Have a good day.